takes a whole lot of giving. Now don't be sad, don't you be mad. A better day will come. It's true that life is no picnic. It often seems a disaster, but don't you grieve when you're deceived. A better day will come. Life's like a rainbow. It has many hues. Now one day there's good news. The next brings the blues. So don't you let life start drilling. Set your soul a-chillin'. Just have a ball. Be kind to all. A better day will come. Like a rainbow, it has many hues. Now one day there's good news, the next brings the blues. So don't you let life start drilling. Set your soul a-chillin'. Just have a ball. Be kind to all. A better day will come. A better day, a better day, a better day will come. Just have a ball, be kind to all. A better day will come. Each time you fall, no, do it all. A better day will come.
Hi, I wanted more better days to come. Everybody, I'm Brad Grossman, if you didn't know, but I'm sure many of you do because this is the 20th COVID culture class, number 20. We started, I believe, on March 18th, and this is the 20th, and I am sad to say that next week is our 21st, but that also means that it's the last one before the summer ends. And I'm really excited to let you all know as we enjoy 3 weeks after, or try to, and think about how we're going to embark on the third act of this craziness that we've been experiencing. For those of you who have been with me for the last 20 weeks, you know that I have a theme every week. And the first, I'll just go right to that. The first, remember, on March 18th, we were talking about shock and what the fuck is going on, and people were having fun, and Chrissy Teigen and John Legend were doing little Instagram videos about how this is going to be the next baby booming era. And then all of a sudden, as we progressed, we saw that our emotions have changed. And on week 9th, I just said that I was calling that week the act 2 of a 3-act movie. And so we were all thinking, okay, we know that this is happening. We don't know where we're going, but what's our strategy to return? How can we open up an economy with no real plan, marketing, and also skeptical consumers? And hopefully there won't be a sequel, meaning like another wave. This was what we were saying in mid-May, leading up to the beginning of June, end of May, and we got a little wrench thrown into the narrative of hope and we experienced the George Floyd death and the ensuing protests. And of course, there is the positive way of looking at that in the sense that we're finally talking about and creating action. And we'll find out in a bit from one of our zeitguests, Dr. Tiffany Jana, who wrote a book called Unconscious Bias and 3 other books. Thanks for being here, Tiffany. And we'll get to you after I do my Zeit guiding. Tiffany was making fun of all my tabs up there, but those of you who've been with me for the last 20 weeks and also are clients that I do this for your organizations know that the first part is the Zeit guiding, where we just hustle through everything. And so after the curveball, we still are in this second act. And here were the themes of every single week. Last week, we had a little bit of hope because we had the 4-time Tony Award winning producer, Ron Simons, and he won more Tony Awards than any other African-American in history in terms of being a producer. Audra McDonald won 5. And we had the chief creative officer of CBS, or Viacom CBS, and the CEO and chairman of Showtime, David Nevins. And this week, there are so I was talking about a cultural destruction to a cultural renaissance, which was going to give us a little bit more hope. And then in week 21, which is now, I said this is the 20th week, but it's the 21st week of COVID. I'm marking March 12th as that date when we all were mandated to shelter in place. And according to Thomas Friedman, the New York Times columnist and author, he said that this is going to be the worst month, which we should really buckle our seatbelts because of the whole school situation. What does that mean in terms of parents and their kids, parents going back to work, kids and their education? It's illuminating inequality because many people who have the money are affording tutors and homeschool teachers, where, as we know, there are many underprivileged people who won't have that luxury. And so the fun theme of the week, though, is I'm calling it the TikTok toe. I'm playing with the word toe, and, I always do these funny, crazy things because I want you to remember it. I want it to stick. And so just in terms of the zeitgeist of TikTok, so those of you who have been with me for the last 15 years that I've been doing Zeit Guide, which means Guide to the Zeitgeist, Spirit of the Times, I was teaching my clients about TikTok maybe right in its inception, before when it was Musical.ly. And I've seen, and you could see on my YouTube page, 3 months ago, I did an evolution of TikTok from there. But now it's the new social media craze. It's not so new anymore. They have over 800 million users. And I'm calling it the TikTok toe because, first, Trump is towing TikTok out of the United States because TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. And Pompeo, just a couple weeks ago, said that TikTok will be banned in the United States. So crazy thing. I know all of your kids are probably obsessed with it. There are even TikTok moms. There are people who start dating on TikTok. There was a great piece in the New York Times about there is a subculture of gay women, lesbians, who are finding love, and the best love that they've ever found, more than any dating app, on TikTok. And obviously you've heard from your kids that there's the Hype House and the Swipe House and the Swamp House or whatever, and it's like a reality show. And in fact, there is a television company called Wheelhouse who is optioning these virtual houses of clicks into a television show. So, oh my God, consumers are going crazy. But Microsoft says they're going to tow it back to the United States by buying it away from ByteDance. And for those of you who don't know, Microsoft really is not in the consumer-facing industry. They are more into enterprise. They actually failed in it. Remember, they had this phone in 2008, 9, 10 that failed. They have the Xbox, but they've been doing an amazing job with Satya Nadella, the new CEO, who basically reignited, but focused on the cloud, focused on enterprise. So why the heck would they want to buy a consumer-facing technology company? So Microsoft is towing it back. That's the big question. If I was going to be a conspiracy theorist, who was the one company that wasn't sent to Washington last week? to actually think about their regulatory measures, or if they are being monopolistic, Microsoft. So maybe Trump is in cahoots with Microsoft, who knows, saying, okay, you don't have to come if you get TikTok out of it. And I actually read a story today that basically Trump wants Microsoft to buy it so he can completely eradicate it from culture. So that's that. Now, Trump asked for the tow fee. So if you're going to like get him out of China, right, he wants actually a cut from the sale since it was his idea. And then, just so you know, I don't know if you saw the memo, but now this is providing, so now you could be even cooler if you go back to your kids, or if you're a CMO who really doesn't know anything. I'm just kidding. And you have all these young people who are working for you who know this stuff. Well, TikTok's Terrible Weekend is music to Triller's ears. And, they basically have only 50 million monthly users compared to 800 million. But after learning about this narrative, there are other TikTok-like platforms that could step into where we are right now and take the competition away from them. Instagram. Oh, this is Likey. So you should know, when it was banned in India, because India didn't want any Chinese companies there in India as well, with fear of them stealing the data, they started using this other one called Likey. So if those of you who saw TikTok, we don't have time to go through this because we want to hear from Tiffany and our other Zeit guest, Matt Seiler, who's the managing director of Reigns International. And we're going to hear about how to get a job and what is he doing about it, as he actually was in the marketing and advertising space, the CEO of IPG Media Brands, and has shifted because he's a serial disruptor. But he's like me, we're always so ahead of the curve. But this is going to work, Matt. I know it. So this is Likey app, just so you can see it. You could see that it has more of a international flavor for those of you in the United States. So that was one sample. Those of you who have contributed, you get all the links from my Zeit guiding. But so that's Likey. This is Triller, as I showed you. This is what it looks like. And basically how they're redefining that or comparing themselves to TikTok is that you could basically make your own music video, right? But they'll edit it for you automatically. So they'll do all the work. So there you have it. Snapchat is actually making a lot of deals with record companies so that they want to get into the game. And Instagram is actually doing something where they're trying to get in there with Reel. So Instagram, which is already Facebook, which owns Instagram, is already being accused for being monopolistic for owning all these platforms. But Facebook is creating a new system within Instagram so that they could get all the TikTok creators over to Facebook. So very important to know all this kind of stuff. If any of you want a crash course in TikTok, since I am a TikTok expert now, email me. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you the evolution. Show you about the Chinese sentiment. But as culture class is ending next week, this is, a really fun way to stay engaged. So we are going to shift to the favorite part of mine, culture class, hearts and minds segment, where we're not just interviewing people and experts. Like, this isn't something where we want to hear about industry trends and what they're doing. That's definitely something we want to talk about, and how they are part of the zeitgeist and how they are shaping culture and where they're hoping we are going to get in Act 3 or beyond, hopefully not. But this is also the time to really get into the hearts and mind. This is cultural. It's not just business. And we are going to start with Matt Seiler. And I am going to stop the share. Actually, let me just introduce you first. And we're going to learn about rain. And we're going to learn about what this all means in a second. I'm going to go back to sharing. So I'm going to stop share right now so we could see our amazing Matt Seiler, and without the screen, speaker view. Let me just do this. You would think that I would be an expert at this after doing it 20 times. Okay, Matt, here we are. So, managing director, you're on mute. I'm going to unmute you. You're still on mute.
No, I'm not.
There you are. Matt Seiler. He is basically.
Hiya, Brad.
How
Hiya,
are you?
gang.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, since I just showed TikTok, I'm sure you're a TikTok expert because you're really, you're basically a Gen Z in terms of all the qualities that I know of you.
I do spend more time on TikTok than I should admit to.
But I'm also talking about your career history of somebody who's basically has not had a traditional career path, right? You're kind of like me.
That is fair to say.
Right? Like, just give us just a Cliff Notes version of what the main steps of your career was. I met you when you were running IPG Media Brands, which is one of the biggest holding companies in advertising. But where did you start? Because I know everybody on this call is always interested in people's stories.
Yeah, so I started in the creative agency business back when the agencies were just known as the agency. We didn't have first names. We were extensions of the client's product groups mostly, since there wasn't even marketing or advertising departments within those client organizations at the time. And I freaking loved it. I started at an agency that doesn't exist anymore.
Just pause for 1 second. I know you have this internet Wi-Fi thing because of the storm. I'm hearing you a little digital. I'm curious to see what everybody else is thinking. No. Yes?
Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. Down, up.
I can move. Let's just try again. For those of you that joined after we did the sound test, I'm now in the laundry room. I've tried other spots in the house, but we'll just go mobile. And I'll just keep talking, and you tell me when I start sounding better. When I start sounding better, I'll move it.
Why don't you try putting the computer closer to your face? I know you're going to be a little Max Headroom-y, but people are saying that it's not clear. What a beautiful house.
Thank you.
You're going to be an interior designer in your next career.
We're doing real estate on this side of talent management. All right, so let's just see if this is any better. This is where we started at. If it's not any better, I think we're just going to have to suck it up.
Right there. Okay. Right there.
Okay. Okay. So, account guy, creative agency, awesome. Loved every second of it. Holding companies came about. I didn't think that we were paying attention to our clients in the way that I thought we should. Are you all groaning because you can't hear me again? Are we still okay?
There you are.
Well, it's just going to require a little extra concentration. The other thing I can do is I took it off of Wi-Fi. I can stick it back on Wi-Fi and see if that does it.
It's better now. This is a community. Okay. Now that we're like just waiting for Matt, everybody put down where they're from. I'm always curious about that. We have a nice turnout today, too, in a world of Zoom fatigue. I'm so blessed. Should we, not clear at all. Better now. Fresno, California. I'll just read this. Atlanta, Massachusetts, San Francisco, Orange County, Fresno. Wow, Fresno. Anybody know that, remember that mini-series with Carol Burnett about the grape business, the wine business, raisin business in Fresno? I'm aging myself. I'm definitely not a Gen Z. Okay, Matt, you want to try again?
All right. You tell me. I'm on Wi-Fi now. Is it good?
Yeah, let's just keep going.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Lisa says it's good, and I always look to Lisa as the arbiter of all things. Lisa says it's good. Anyway, so I was an account guy a long time. Holding companies came about. I didn't think they were really in service of the client. I missed serving clients. I thought the best place to go was media because that's where the concentration of spend was. I was incredibly fortunate having run business at a holding company level to start in media as the CEO. I would strongly recommend to any of you when you start something new, start as the boss of it. because then you can affect really significant change, and you bring an intelligent naivety to it where I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew what didn't work. And I had an awesome team, and it led to great things, which led to a global role running for IPG, which had great, huge, wonderful clients like MasterCard and Sony and Microsoft and so on. And then that led to running the group, which ultimately grew to be about a $2 billion business with a phenomenal team. And I got bored, as I do. So I'm a renovator. I like going in and fixing things that are not living up to their potential. Once they're there, you do not want me. I may even get bored to the level of becoming an arsonist firefighter. If there isn't a problem to solve, I may create one. And so I decided I wanted to go fix one of the screwed up media companies, read like Time Inc. or almost any other media company at that time.
I remember that. I remember. Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be so easy. And we had a phenomenal book of business. We had had double-digit growth for 7 of the 8 years that I was running the place. The only year we didn't, we had triple-digit growth. So I thought $2 billion book of business, pretty great results, awesome team, some really entrepreneurial, great things that we led to the industry and so on and so forth. So I thought I'll just go apply that somewhere else. And it didn't work that way. I found
you were working, if I remember, you were working for an MCM, right? A multi-channel.
Well, that's what I did instead. So quick side here is I went to a recruiter whom I liked and said, this is harder to make the pivot than I thought. I'd like to hire you to be my agent because I feel like if I were to pay you, I'd get the attention I need in order to get to what I want. And she said, wow, really interesting idea. Haven't thought about that before. Let me talk to the other partners. And she got back to me and prefaced with, you should definitely not do this because they wanted a huge amount of money to take me on as their client and they wanted all the transaction fees. But I thought, why isn't there such a thing as an agent for business people? I need one. They don't exist. So I went to what you're saying, Brad. I went to become the head of an MCN called Studio 71. And day one, I looked at all of our channels, which are all held by YouTubers, Snappers, Insta, et cetera, and they all had agents. So I'm like, wow, you're 18 and you have an agent. I wanted one. I don't have one. There's a vacuum that I'm going to fill. And so I decided to create a talent management company, and that brings you almost up to speed.
Okay, cool. So for those of you who couldn't hear, Matt, the reason why I called him Gen Z or even a millennial is because he's somebody who has really redefined himself in many different careers through his history. And like he says, he's a revolutionary and he likes to blow shit up. And I admire that in you. And so if you were, and in fact, you were a client of mine for a bit, you know, at that point, you were really trying to think about or fix, and again, ahead of your time, or actually they probably should listen to you now, how media buying, and we learned about from many of our other guests about advertising and media and buying different, you know, time or space or in social media, like how can you reconstitute that? And you were too ahead of the curve. So now you're like, holy shit, you know where I can be now, and you're in the prime space, is how do I reconstitute the executive placement business? And what you just said is that usually you have a headhunter who works for a company, right? And they're paying the headhunter to find the best talent. They don't work for the talent, they work for the company. Therefore, there's this underserved executive who probably needs somebody more than ever to market them in a constantly changing job market where we don't really know where it's going. Did I say that okay?
100% right on, Brad.
All right, so you could hire me as your marketer. But I love, with your marketing mind, you went from marketing brands to marketing people now, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. By the way, I think if you talk more slowly, it's less digital. So let's try that. So let's talk about that. Why right now do you think that individuals need an agent like you? Let's call it a talent agent in the same way as you said, like Hollywood represents Brad Pitt and gets him jobs, right? Why do you feel that you should represent executives during this moment, during the zeitgeist of today?
Well, I think it's something that should have and could have existed a long time ago, and I really don't know why it didn't. I talked to a bunch of search firms when I was looking to build this business on my own, and they all said, yeah, it's a really great opportunity. And then they didn't say it exactly this way, but they said, if we could figure out how to do it without screwing up our core business, we would. But there's a line that I love, and I'll probably give a couple of lines that I love during this conversation. But one of them that I love is, incumbency is the last place to look for innovation. So if you think about that, the reason years back that Saturn wasn't where GM was, because if GM tried to create that car and do it in Detroit, it never would have had the independent dealer body, the pricing that it did, et cetera. There's a reason why Tesla is Tesla and Prius is Toyota. So the idea of doing it outside, taking it away from an existing organization like an executive search firm in order to build it, gives it its greatest chance. So we did it on the outside first. And why now more than ever is because I think each of us really needs to understand the benefit that we potentially bring to the market, to the potential employer with whom we're going to work. And we need to understand how our stories make us different or better from anyone else. And then I think even more broadly than that, we've all gotten used to fractional everything. You know, it's Uber, it's Rent a Runway, it's Airbnb, it is auto leasing, which has been around forever. And yet we don't think about employment that way at all. We think about employment as, I'm going to go work at IBM for the rest of my life. We used to call that IBM Blue. Then it became more like, you were somewhere for 5 or 10 years. Now people look at individuals who have been at the same place for 10 plus years and say, what's wrong with you? Are you not very driven? Do you need a cushy, safe environment? And so I think that we need to start thinking about it more like leasing, as in horses for courses. What's the difference that you're most likely to make that inspires you, that you wake up every day excited by? And then who are the organizations that are most inclined to help you achieve that difference? So it's difference makers for organizations looking to have differences made. And from my years in the agency and marketing world, I have brought to this phenomenal organization of which I'm now a part. So I built a talent management business and then brought it to the phenomenon that is Reigns International. But what we do is bring the marketing expertise and say, let's apply what great brands are to individuals and help them find their USP, that unique selling proposition, for organizations that are interested in that. So horses for courses, also looking for opportunities that are maybe more time-based. Like as a renovator, as I said, I'm probably like a 3-4 year guy. I'm pretty good at identifying what the issue is, helping to fix it, ensuring that it is sustainable, and then I probably need to go find something else to do as those people that are the sustainers are going to take over. And that's great. Rather than looking at people's resumes going, well, Brad, I see this one ended. Did they start hating you or did you start hating them? And what happened here? Everything is like a problem when it stopped, rather than, hey, I went to this place, I worked with an amazing team, we achieved what I set out to do, and then I went to do it again somewhere else. That's how we should be thinking.
Yeah, no, it seems like, and again, this is very millennial, right? That like our career should be more episodic as opposed to a lifelong story.
Totally.
Right? Wait,
Totally.
so
there's
especially now, it's especially now because like the world is changing so quickly. We need different roles, and roles are becoming so irrelevant, especially now, as we've been saying. COVID is an accelerator of how the world was changing before, right? In business, like we knew everybody.
The world is changing so quickly, but it took so bloody long for it to start to change quickly. You know, you look at entrepreneurs that have launched incredible businesses and go, how did you do that? You did it so quickly. I'm like, no, you didn't see the 10 years that it took in order to get to this. You know, launching a talent management company, that was 2 years of doing it independent of finding Dan and the great team. You know, starting new things takes a long time. What I think you're getting to right now in the world is a fast forward of what should have happened a long time ago. Why employment wasn't fractional, I don't get it, except for we as human beings hate change. And so we're reluctant to embrace things until they are thrust upon us and then we can't really avoid it. So I think that the moment that we are in is going to be accelerated by COVID, but it's also going to be accelerated by numbers of people that are on this call are coming into workforces with the expectation that they're going to live to be 125 years old, 150 years old. Guess what? You're not retiring at 65. And so many people that are joining the workforce now are anticipating having 7 different careers, not 7 different jobs, but I'm going to be a nurse, and then I'm going to be a firefighter, and then I'm going to be an astronaut. And those are all realistic things if you have, those episodic periods to look forward.
So because, the sound issue kind of took some time away. So I have 3 main points that I want to discuss with you. So number 1, so I guess I want to show your website. You don't think that people should define themselves as like, I'm a marketer, I'm a operations person, or that if a company is basically looking for a senior VP of marketing, do you think that that is going to change in terms of your visionary, your vision of where you would like your company to go to? And I'm going to show how you're doing it. Like, how should you define, like, I'm great at Snapchat, I'm great at this, or I have 10 years of marketing experience. But you were saying you should define yourself as an astronaut, a blank, a blank, a blank. Isn't there a connective tissue amongst all yourselves, amongst an individual? Yeah. And isn't that a way to really market yourself differently?
So I'm waiting for you to pull up the website. Should I wait for that, or should I just keep talking?
Just keep talking. Just keep talking. I got it right here.
So what we do so what you're seeing on the website is that everybody, like Brian is Thrasher, Sasha is Tastemaker, and the man behind the curtain is our CFO and COO. So each of us has our own logo, and we do that because that's what we do for the individuals that we represent, both on our talent management group, which is a long-term talent management, like I described, the sort of CAA for the rest of us, and for our marketplace. So the marketplace is
a Hollywood agency, by the way, if you didn't know. Who represents actors, writers,
CAA, William Morris Endeavor, those kinds of things that represent Hollywood and or sports entertainment. So what we do with the talent that we manage long term, and for the people that we enter into the marketplace, which is a 2-sided market in which we have people paid to gain entry into the marketplace, and then we have organizations that pay a membership fee in order to gain access to those people that we have fully vetted. We help redound them to a word or phrase that best describes them. So I've already said that I'm Renovator. So I have done 3 onboardings today. One of them was Power Shift.
Yeah, you even have a logo. Look at that.
There's my Renovator. So I've done 3 onboardings today. One of them was Power Shift. One of them was Midas. And one of them was Maitre D. And each of them is very different. As I say to people, they're not snowflakes. It's not like every single person is going to have a different thing, but it allows them to tell their story. So Maitre D tells his story. He's had a phenomenally successful career, and how he looks at it is he's the person within the organization that's going to help ensure you have the best possible experience. And what he does industry-wise is not at all restaurant-based, but you know what a maitre d' is. With the Power Shift, I've been described sometimes as a turbo boost. The Power Shift is very similar to that. You're going to come into an organization that is doing okay, and then that Power Shift is going to come, and you're going to go so much higher. And what we do with everybody is we help find those facts that support it. When have you actually done a Power Shift? When have you led organizations and their customers to a place as a maitre d' would be? So you want people to incorporate it in how they tell their story, because another madism that I say all day long, and anybody that has anything to do with branding certainly knows this. If you attempt to be all things to all people, you end up being nothing to nobody. So the very best brands, because you know exactly what they stand for. You know who their target audience is. You want to be a part of that community, and that's what we're doing for individuals within the Reigns network.
So great theory. Okay, and then we're probably gonna have to wrap up in a few minutes, but great theory is that people should not define themselves by their jobs. They should define themselves by the story they lived and through a word. By the way, what do you think mine is? I'm just so curious.
I think you're professor. I think that you were a teacher from the very start, but then you started teaching from a cultural perspective. So I think you've got a nice sort of combination of it's what you actually are and what you do.
All right,
cool. What do you think?
Yeah, for those of you who didn't know, I started as a tutor for high school kids and then did it for a Hollywood mogul and then for Matt and now for you. So I am a teacher, a professor. I love pop professor. I'm sure people who got PhDs won't like that. So now you have this theory because it's hard for us to define ourselves as jobs, but more by our skill set, who we are, the brand that you create. How are you turning that theory into practice with Rain?
It's across the board. So we have what's called the Difference Makers Brief. So I love briefs. One of the things that I loved most about advertising was the simplicity and the singularity of a single sheet of paper. Objective, what are you trying to do? And that's both for hiring organizations and individuals. Strategy, what's the best path to get there? Target audience, into whom do you need to get that story? What do they currently think? That and objective are my favorites. What do they currently think? Let's be honest. If you've got barriers that need to be overcome in order to get that thing that you want, what are they? You've hopped around a lot. You've got things that need to be addressed. And so let's talk about them because you need to face them in order to be able to correct them. What you want them to think is what's on the other side of those barriers. Single-minded proposition is like a bad headline. Not that it's bad, it's just not a well-crafted one. And then 3 reasons to believe. What are the facts that you're going to use with that one line that's going to help change their minds if there are barriers to what you want those minds to be post-barrier? And we do that for onboarding into the marketplace. We do that when we are on a search for a candidate for a retained role. And we do it with the clients. What specifically are you looking to have done here, organization? Are you looking to have this particular difference made? Because we can match the person that's good at making that difference best if we really understand what it is. Or actually, do you need to have a difference made within your whole organization? Is this not really a thing about a person? Is Tiffany not going to be the solution because you need to create a better nest in order for Tiffany to be able to provide the brilliance to your organization? So let's make a difference to the entire organization before we look for a change. But it's always that singular, what are we trying to do? If you don't get your objective right, everything else is wrong, or if it's right, it's right by chance.
That's really cool, Matt. So because we're out of time, I encourage everybody to see where Matt takes this. Rain International. Matt, if you want to put your contact info and the website in the chat, you're welcome to do that. The one thing I just want to end with, I mean, it's brilliant. You're more about branding, using your advertising expertise to brand people to connect with the audience. In this case, the audience is the corporation or the company that needs to solve problems. In the same way that, like, my problem right now is that my hands aren't clean, right? Like, so you're working for Clorox, and Clorox is the brand that's going to clean my hands. So in the same way, you know, the person is going to be the person that's going to fix the corporation's problem. So I have the problem as a consumer of washing my hands. Clorox is going to come and make it all great. So it's brilliant. You're such a brilliant man. I love your brain.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
complex.
I so appreciate it. And since you said Clorox, just a big shout out to Clorox because they have just named a new female CEO. Need lots more of those. So kudos to them. Thank you very much, Brad. Tiffany, I look very much forward to hearing you. I have just wanted to get through me in order to be able to get to you. So take it on, Brad. Thanks so much for including me.
Well, okay. So thank you. So we just talked about, and I'm just going to shift to Jana here, how to get your next job, which if I'm going to have one takeaway from Matt is really go deep into your soul and figure out what you're best at, not in terms of like, I'm a marketer, I'm an operations person, I'm a bookkeeper, but like, I'm a professor. I love explaining things and distilling and performing and all that kind of stuff. So, so I love that. So that's kind of like, how are you going to get your next job is really understanding who you are, because you have to be resilient and nimble in a constantly evolving marketplace. That's absolutely going to happen. And now that many of us are getting furloughed and unemployed, we're all trying to, and many of our businesses might not even exist after, we really have to shift the way that we represent ourselves and the stories we tell, and use platforms like LinkedIn to really elucidate that. So Tiffany, Dr. Jana, who's written 4 books. One is called Overcoming Bias and is the head of TMI Consulting. I guess in a way, you're going to teach us how to keep our jobs. Because in a world right now, we have to do everything as an employee, as in a company, to dismantle systemic racism. So I am so grateful that you're here. I know you're so busy, and right now you must be busier than ever. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's exciting.
So Tiffany, let's start. I mean, many of us on this are probably in these, workshops right now that these corporate leaders, who mostly aren't Black or brown people, by the way, right? Who are making their employees learn about how to end racism in the corporate world and in the world, right? And so and many of us, like me, I'm my own person. I'm not on all these calls, so I don't really know what's happening. So you get a call, right, from a chief diversity officer, and they're like, Dr. Jana, you have a great reputation. You wrote all these books. You're the experts. What do they ask you?
So what people want right now is to either develop or level up a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. So what we do is TMI Consulting, we are grounded in data and metrics, and that's something that's unusual for my industry. Most people are throwing training at things. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to give people a mixed method assessment. So qualitative and quantitative data. And our latest platform is Loom, the Culture Map. And it is a software as a service that allows us to measure, map, and improve organizational culture using technology. So,
they're not just asking you to come in and like speak to their employees about.
No, so I do, I spent 2019, I was gone 90% of the time. I was both pitching VCs and doing speaking engagements. So I speak all the time. I'm still doing that. So I have kind of a motivational spirit, right? I'm able to communicate the difficult content around, racism and all of the isms in a way that people
Right.
can.
You defined yourself by a brand, emotional. I saw it.
I'm an awareness artist and a pleasure activist. And an awareness artist, it means that I'm using a myriad of any medium, including business, art, whatever, literature, to create an embrace of humanity that is wide enough to leave no one out. And pleasure activism is about liberation through joy. So my brand is joy. I believe that I look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, even in a corporate context, as an aspirational asset that allows us to accelerate the good work that we were already here to do. But we can do it with a positive outlook. It doesn't have to be a deficit-based model, blame and shame-based model. I don't do any of that. We calibrate what you've got, we calibrate what you need, we calibrate a clear set of goals, and we get you there.
Huh. And how do you make it so positive right now? Because most of my white peers are like, oh my God, I feel so guilty. I feel so I have this white fragility.
Of course. So it's about, I believe that it's about moving beyond the compliance, moving beyond the optics, and recognizing. So for me, my grand vision is the Afrofuturist workplace, and Afrofuturism is it's a genre, Sun Ra, it's music, it's art, it's Black Panther, right? So
right. That was all Afrofuturism.
Yeah. Afrofuturism. So what we're doing is
it's so cool.
People of the African diaspora envisioning a different kind of future, one that is devoid of the delusion of white supremacy, identity, hierarchy, all of the different things that create inequity in all of our systems. But I am I have a doctorate of management and organizational leadership. So my laboratory is the workplace. So what I believe with Afrofuturist workplace vision is that every morning I wake up, every single day I wake up and I get to do something that I love. I get to use the best of my time, my talent, my ability, my spirit in service of something greater. And everyone should be able to use their personal brand. Thank you for that. That's so cool, right? To leverage their personal brand and everything they know in service of making some kind of a difference that matters to them. And right now, our workplaces are very, very transactional. We commodify human beings. And the way that we make inspiration around, a very sore subject, something that we have been utterly inept at communicating about, is by tapping into the nature of the human spirit. What happens if we reconceive of work as a collective co-creation, not only in service of the mission and vision of the organization, but in service of the actualization of the human beings that are working and co-creating together? What if part of the work is that I'm going to become the best version of myself over time? What I've learned in the many decades I've been doing this work is that the workplace is the biggest learning laboratory that we have outside of structured education, and we're not leveraging it well. What we do is we hire and promote for technical competency, but we're not paying attention to how well someone creates a sense of belonging around them, to how well people motivate and inspire the people around them, to whether or not they have a sense of love and camaraderie and compassion and empathy in their hearts. These things matter. I hate soft skills as a term. I call them interpersonal competencies, because the absence of those soft skills or interpersonal competencies will wreck your culture. And I believe that CEOs should be every bit as intentional about intentionally crafting their culture as much as they intentionally craft any other aspect of the business. We shouldn't be victims of the people we threw together and hope it all works out and we don't end up on the front page. No, we can help people build the skills and tools required to have great interpersonal competency. And they're exactly that. It's tools and skills. It's not rocket science.
Well, okay, so that seems like any human being who works in an organization should abide by those edicts and the tactics or suggestions you illuminate. How is that related in more specific ways to the dismantleization of systemic racism in corporate world? Like, how are you dovetailing those two?
Yeah. So you talked about overcoming bias, my first book. My second book was Erasing Institutional Bias, how to create systemic inclusion, systemic change for organizational inclusion, right? So that's where the metrics really come in, because it is through the lens of data that we're able to see the inequitable experience that people are having within organizations. And that's a bifurcated challenge. There is the systemic and structural sort of bias and exclusion that's built within a system. And then there's the systemic bias all around us. And that would be my third book, the B Corp Handbook, How to Use Business as a Force for Good. So that talks about creating equity at a global scale through the impacts of your business. But if we look inside the business first, what we find is that, we have a lot of policies, procedures, systems, and practices that are in place because that's the way we've always done it. Right? There are a lot of things that are the unwritten rules that just exist. We're doing a lot of things without meaning to cause harm. We're tapping our own networks. We're going to our alma maters for new employees. We're hiring and promoting people because we like hanging out with them and we want to have a beer with them. That does not promote like cognitive diversity or any other kind of diversity. So the first thing we want to do is actually do a structural audit, a structural inclusion audit, and look at policies, procedures, written and unwritten rules. What are the things around the embedded aspects of the organization that might be unintentionally leaving people behind? We don't create rules and regulations. Like if you have a handbook with exclusive language, I'm actually non-binary. They, them are my preferred pronouns. I'm not offended by she, because if you try to take my black girl magic away, I'll hit you. So, but if you have a handbook that is full of highly gendered language and your dress code, is a highly gendered dress code, and you are pushing people to the margins without ever meaning to. So it is about applying the DEI lens to everything that you do. The analogy that I like to use is information systems.
DEI lens, could you just...
DEI lens, diversity, equity, inclusion, right? Yeah. So if you look at information systems and information technology, 40 years ago, 35 years ago, if you had a guy, and it was definitely a guy in the basement who you called up to fix a Texas Instruments calculator when it broke, that was a big deal. Fast forward 25, 20 years ago, we recognized that if we implement and integrate information systems and information technology across the entire organization, that it force accelerates and fundamentally shifts the way we're able to do business. That is the inflection point that we're at now with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It used to be a silo, a department, a person, and what our methodology and many of the practitioners who've been around for a while are doing is integrating it throughout. There's not a single key performance indicator that you as a CEO care about that I can't link back to diversity, equity, and inclusion done well.
Wow. Okay, it's interesting. You and Matt have a lot of connective tissues. Number one, you both have like used digital technology to evaluate, in Matt's case, the individual based on the context of the company that's searching. And you have this technology too that really rates a company's level of
Calibrate their culture. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well,
So
since you mentioned me, can I say a thing?
yeah.
Sorry, I'm not taking time away. I'm amplifying, I think. But one of the things that I am super passionate about, and is part of our creds as well, is we use a McKinsey study that organizations that have diversity at the top are 33% more successful from a revenue perspective. So I think that we get caught in this trap of you need to have people of color or different sexual orientations or whatever because you're supposed to, versus, no, it's really good for business. It's so important, and I think we all just need to reinforce that all the time. Diversity leads to better outcomes, always.
And also, let me just chime in here too. Also, if you're creating a consumer-facing product or even a product for enterprises, it's like, you're not just selling to white men. It's kind of like what was wrong with the advertising business in terms of sexism. Why are like men making commercials for, women who are driving cars? It's not good for business.
This is the shift that's happened too, is that what you brought up is the business case for diversity versus the social justice case for diversity. And the business case has been the focus for the past few years. The public lynching of George Floyd and the spotlight that's been put on the murder of Black men is that the social justice case actually matters, because it is because of enterprise and economy that was actually built on the backs in large parts of the world, including our country, built on the black backs of enslaved Africans, that we actually owe a debt of gratitude to these communities that we marginalize. And so the social justice case isn't entirely unwarranted, but it's not enough. And that's what I love, is I'm a CEO and I want to know what's happening with the resources that I deploy. So the idea of tying everything you do with your diversity back to data in service of quantified change and accountability, I think is extraordinary.
How will you define success?
How, with an organization or in my career?
I think you're already successful. I'll define that for you and everybody else. Thanks. No, but in terms of how like companies becoming less racist, more inclusive, more equitable.
So
what company would get an A+?
So it's okay. So that's always a hard one, because lots of people do different things well. There's no gold star winner for everything. But Sodexo is a company that has been deeply engaged in diversity work for a very long time. So they're way out front. That's an example of one, but I would never say that one company is just 100% perfect, because it's.
But when you say diversity work, what does that mean, and what was the effect of it?
So they have had an intentional diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy program, people with diversity in their titles for decades, frankly, right? So there are people who just wrote a Black Lives Matter statement a couple weeks ago. They just made their first chief diversity C-suite hire. Yeah. Sodexo's been there for decades. So that's the difference. But success is, like, when we deploy our first assessment, we get our baseline of where the organization is culturally. Success is closing the equity gaps, because when we disaggregate the experiential data and the psychometric measures, what we find is that millennial females are having a very different experience from baby boomer females. Black people are having a very different experience from Hispanic people. And we want to close those equity experiential gaps so that people are having more of a similar experience and more of a sense of belonging. And then the success is based on what the organization is looking for. So we often are able to see an increase in the bottom line, an expansion in their customer base. There's many numbers of things, increased representation, both in the employee base and at the leadership and at the board level. So we calibrate that destination, and success is getting to that destination and me getting to wave bye-bye, because we've embedded sustainable practices within their organization.
All right, last question, because we have to wrap up. And if both of you are interested, if have some time and people want to ask questions, we always have Zeitgeist after hours, since I'm now the cultural DJ, so to speak. So is there hope? And like I keep saying that, and a lot of other people are saying it in different ways, is that COVID has been a magnifier of all the shit that impacted society before. In fact, I do my cultural almanac every year, and I wrote it in November, and the first chapter was The World on Fire. And this was in November, right? And that the only way to reboot our world being on fire is to reboot the sense of humanity. So what I'm trying to say is that our world sucked before, and this is a magnifier or an X-ray on all the problems, especially here, whether it's systemic racism, inequality, healthcare, climate change, whatever, politics, and systemic racism. And so hopefully this will be an accelerator to the world that we want to have, right? So do you have hope that what happened with Floyd and the conversations happening in corporate America is going to accelerate this horrible problem that is plaguing our society?
I always, before George Floyd's murder, I considered my work cathedral building work. I never expected to see any kind of seismic shift. I was going to build on the foundation that standing on the shoulders of those who came before me. And now I have more hope than ever, because we are now experiencing the largest civil rights movement in the history of the world, much less the nation, the world. The difference now, I believe that there is a difference between intellectually understanding and academically understanding racism and actually feeling it, because your heart cracked open when you saw something so atrocious you didn't even know how to process it. We were already traumatized from being locked down from COVID, and then we were captive to our screens, and we were forced to look at something that many of us had been able to look away from because of all of our cultural distractions. And what we have that we've never had before, because Black people have been asking for their freedom in lives from time immemorial, but what we have now that we didn't have before is we have a critical mass of allies from all cultures and all races standing with us, marching beside us, and saying that enough is enough. And that is extraordinary. We have access to the people who have their hands on the levers of power and are willing to shift, change in order to make room for more of us.
Wow. Okay. Well, Dr. Jana, you're fascinating, and I see so many connective tissues between you and Matt. Maybe you should talk, because you're both very
Yes, please.
Yeah. And it's yeah. You guys just have coffee. Before we go to questions, I just wanted to remind everybody that tomorrow or next week is our last. Did I share or no? Did I share the screen? No, I didn't share the screen. Sorry. Next week is our last culture class, like I said before, and I had a Zeitgeist on all of them. Next week, I am going to have a Zeitgeist, but I'm not going to reveal who it is, because it's going to be very special, and hopefully it'll inspire curiosity. But also, since so many of you love the beginning where I'm doing the Zeitguiding, that's what I do for my clients, my customers, and I have a premium class where anybody from any company could come on, and I do a Zeitguide culture class on my 4 buckets: global, tech, consumer, and work. I am going to do a premium sample next week. So the whole thing is just going to be me Zeitguiding. I hope it's awesome, but there's going to be a couple special guests that I don't want to reveal yet. And if you have time tomorrow, one of my dreams, I check on my bucket list, is that I am going to be on the virtual stage of the 92nd Street Y. And I'm so excited. And for many of you, you've been on Culture Class and seen the interview that I did with Charles Renfro, the architect of Diller Scofidio Renfro, who designed the High Line, the Shed, and buildings and public spaces all over the world. We're going to do it tomorrow at 7 p.m. The tickets, all proceeds go to the 92nd Y, and I hope we support them, because we know that how many, how these live event businesses are being impacted so harshly by COVID and everything else. So I hope I see many of you tomorrow. So you could, I'll put this in the chat if you want to RSVP, and tomorrow night. And next week we're going to finish. So if you both have time, I'm sure people might have questions. Anybody? I'm sorry, if you could just do it now. I can't scroll because it's just. Let me ask a question then to Matt, to both of you. And by the way, Dr. Jana and Matt, please put your info in social, all that kind of stuff in the chat for everybody. What would be one piece of advice you tell everybody on this call about trying to get their next job?
Well, they should probably reach out to me.
You're such a salesperson. I love it.
No, but the most important thing in getting your next job is cutting out all the noise that's around you. That I can't emphasize enough. The mistake that almost everyone makes is they attempt to be too open to opportunity. And in a COVID world, that's exaggerated because everybody feels like they just need to get a job. And the problem is nobody's hiring for a job. People are hiring for a very specific thing that they need to have done in order to move the organization forward. Don't be open. Be really restrictive. Tell people no. Tell them exactly what you're interested in and then be able to support why you are uniquely qualified. So the counterintuitiveness of this is everybody thinks cast a wide net because you're bound to catch something. And the answer is make sure you have the right bait on that one hook, not a net.
Great answer. That's very inspirational. So don't rush into it. Really, this is your time to really soul search about who you are and what you want. Tiffany has a question from somebody. How do you take a company from checking the DEI box to a culture of inclusion? Maybe conclusion if they're not inclusive. How's that?
Finish. No mas. Yes. So first of all, I'm at a point in my career, like the pleasure activist in me will say, if you're looking for a job, you got to lean into what you love and what brings you joy, because then it never, ever feels like work. I haven't worked since, I don't know, somewhere in my 20s, right? So the people who want to check the box.
You know, there's a reason for that, by the way, that we could talk about it sometime.
We will. I look forward to it. So I screen people for that ahead of time. At this point in my career, I don't work with anyone who's checking the box. In order to engage with my methodology, people have to commit to a minimum of 12, 18, or 24 months, depending on the size and age of their organization. And the very first thing I'm doing is engaging with executive leadership, senior leadership, to find out where everyone is, because there are three things that will make any diversity effort fail. And the first one, it's like any change management, insufficient buy-in from the top. All it takes is one detractor to completely wreck, and I won't allow my clients to fail. So I'm going to work very closely with executive leadership to make sure that whatever their objections, their concerns, their fears, whatever they are, there's nothing I haven't seen, right? There's only so many variations on a theme. So we address those up front and make sure that we turn folks into champions. And if the board of directors wants to opt out, or the leadership says this is only for employees, we don't want this, they don't get to work with me. They can work with somebody who's going to just sell them training and they'll be happy, but we don't check boxes over here.
Okay. What would you advise Matt for starting his new infrastructure over there to make sure that he can help place people of color, of different genders, different identities, and as well as the companies that he's working with to place these people?
Well, you best believe that I was doing what BIPOC people do, and that's Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC. Yeah. And as soon as you started scrolling the website, I was looking for the faces of color, because when we're looking to you for support, if we don't see a reflection of ourselves, then we don't know whether that's by design or by default. And we don't frankly have time to figure that out. So the fact that you already have diverse representation means that there's at least some cultural fluency that can handle me, right? That's not going to think that when I do this and start gesticulating with my hands that I'm angry. No, it's the cultural communication of a Black person, a Black woman. I'm passionate, I'm engaged. So that's a great start. The next thing is just going to be, I don't know what the recruiting process looks like. How do you go about finding these people? But it is about being really intentional about casting a much wider net, about going beyond the bounds of the known networks and intentionally curating people. For every professional association that you can identify, there are multiple racial equivalents. So the National Association of Certified Public Accountants, there's a National Association of Black Certified Public Accountants, Asian Certified Public Accountants. So identifying the places where folks might be and letting them know that you're available and looking for all kinds of people is the best way to do it.
And historic Black colleges as well.
Yeah.
To find people. And Matt, what kind of advice would you ask from Tiffany as you are building your marketplace of amazing people who should get amazingly unique jobs?
Well, so I will reach out to you, Tiffany, under a less public forum. But
she's very expensive, by the way. Very expensive.
There's probably a little quid pro quo or something, because I think we need to shorten up your brand a little bit. I think there's a few too many words in there. But anyway, so what I would love your thoughts on is, you're right, we do have some really great African American representation within the firm, and one of my partners is working with the marketplace on finding the right organizations with whom to create some kind of a JV in order to ensure that we're getting the right people into the marketplace. We're doing that for women, for veterans, and for people of color. So I'd love your thoughts on if there are particular organizations that we should consider partnering with. Let you know which you think would be best. Be really, really helpful. But I'll reach to you separately.
Awesome.
Okay. One last question for both of you. When are we, because you're talking to so many people, when do you think we're all going to be going back to the physical office? I know that's like random, but you're both in like the C-suite space.
So I'll answer first, if it give you a sec to think. What I would say is, I love you. You know I love you, and I'm going to answer this in a way that's going to sound like I don't, because I could say that's the wrong question. Because I think that part of the theme of everything that we talk about is getting back to the way things were. That our objective is to get back to the office because that's where we used to go. Rather, I think the question should be, do we need to go back to an office? When are the times when we should be together? When are we better off not being together? How do we do virtual? So I personally don't think I'll ever go back to an office. I'll go there when I'm at a great meeting with Tiffany or somebody else or you. But I'm not going to the office every day. I don't see the need. And I absolutely applaud companies that are using Corona to start making the decisions again that should have been made ages ago, because what we've learned is that people are more productive when you give them your confidence, when you show them you trust them. And so I don't have an interest in getting back to the way things were.
No.
This is a good, sorry, Tiffany, I'm just going to add something onto that because I just got a question from Taj Greenlee, who, by the way, is from the 92nd Y. So glad. I hope I'm passing the test and you're excited for tomorrow. He says, what's a fun thing we could do to make our days working from home easier? So there's the flip side. Tiffany, why don't you take that one?
You're asking the pleasure activist?
Yeah.
So it's weird because for me, it's not any different than it would have been when I wasn't working from home. And it's about it's prioritizing pleasure, prioritizing fun. And what fun looks like for you is going to be different for other people. So what I recommend you do is make a list of activities that you find fun, whether it's, playing cards.
Drinking. Drinking.
Drinking. That can be sketchy in the middle of your work day, but
right.
But yeah, so make a list of things that bring you joy, of activities that bring you fun, that make you feel that joy, and then prioritize creating a slice of time to knock a couple of the fun things off of your list like you would the other priorities. The biggest thing for me in the COVID times is differentiating, because I used to work from home, and I was a work at home and a stay at home mom when my children were very small. And differentiating my work day from the end of my day. And my big one is differentiating my weekends from my work days. If you create really strict boundaries, the work from home thing won't make you crazy. I stop my work at a certain time and I maintain that discipline so that that rest of that time is mine and I can be present to my family, present to myself, do my meditation walks, whatever it is. So I think differentiation and then prioritizing your personal list of joy bringing activities.
I love you. Just gave me an opportunity to kind of show off another curatorial thing. Look at this. The pandemic workday is 48 minutes longer and has more meetings. A study of 3.1 million workers around the world found an uptick in email.
Email.
Yeah. Crazy. 21,000 companies they researched. So, but come on, Zoom fatigue.
It's real. So with Zoom fatigue, I do not show up on a screen unless it is mandatory. If somebody is paying me 5 figures to show my face, I will show my face. Otherwise, my screen is off and I take a call because I clock an average of a mile a call just from pacing. I can't afford to lose those steps these days. So no screen. And the whole work from home phenomenon is a diversity issue, right? The idea of turning on my screen and sharing even a tiny slice of my home, that is deeply private. I might not invite you to my house, whoever you are. And if I wouldn't invite you to my house, what makes you think that I want to turn on my screen? Not everyone has the privilege of a home where they can make an office space. And if you've got 5 dogs, 2 cats, and 3 screaming children, it's a disadvantage. So I think that we need to be a lot more thoughtful about our expectations of when and how people show up and not expect FaceTime all the time.
I agree. Can you as employees or us as employees, or I'm not an employee, but you know, could they say to their bosses like, hey, I'm so zoomed out. Could I just call it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's an inclusion issue, whether it is your mental health, your energy reserves, if you link it to your productivity, hey boss, I notice that when I don't have to be on the screen as much, I'm able to maintain a cadence of energy that allows me to be more productive. Ain't nobody gonna argue with that.
Yeah. And what about you, Matt? It's like you need to kind of step up your work from home equipment.
Well, but I totally get it from a DEI perspective. I started this conversation in the laundry room, and I worked out of the laundry room for a while. And what I actually love is actually sort of opposite Tiffany of, I like that people are in my home. There's no pretense. I don't like it when people put screens up and pretend that they're somewhere else and somewhere else, being someone else in a different environment. I love that, like, this is me. This is real. This is not me putting a suit on. This is not me coming to an office and going into a boardroom and talking to you as a business person. This is us talking as people, and I think that that's another thing that I don't want us to go back to. I love the notion that we are talking to each other as human beings. I love, and granted, I'm a very senior, old person who doesn't have a lot to prove to young people who, when I'm in a laundry room, I can joke about it. Other people that are in the laundry room because they have no other place to go, that's a very different situation. I'm not making light of that. But I think it's really important for all of us. We had a new wonderful person join our firm in Chicago a couple of months ago, and he came to the call with me in a tie and a white shirt, and I could see the laundry machine right behind him. Like, dude, you do not have to do that. Like, putting on a shirt and tie doesn't make it like we're suddenly in a business environment. You're in your kitchen. There's your washing machine. I'm good. I'm in my laundry room. There's mine. So I love that. I think that that's really important. And then to the other point, which I think Tiffany is 100% right, of, find time for pleasure. Don't feel as though you're chained to your desk and that it's the same old. And with that too, we're all fatigued with the numbers of conversations that we have to have during the day. But there's a thing that we know is each of us is home. And so people that you haven't spoken to in a while, people that you'd love to reach out to professionally, personally, do that because you know where they are. So reach out, create a broader community through this, not just through the social platforms, but actually by talking to people.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's end with that moment of inspiration. Let's end with that moment of inspiration. Thank you both. You are actually the last my final culture class of the summer, where I have amazing experts like you both. So thank you for kicking off the culture class or ending the culture class season. And again, next week, for everybody still on, I'm going to do my Zeit guiding, and we'll take a break. And then I'll tell you what's going to happen in the fall. I don't know yet. No one knows anything. So
All right.
I know that I love doing this.
Part of this.
And I know I love doing this. And
I look forward to our continued conversation.
Like
Thank you, Brad.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Tiffany, thank you.
That was so fun. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we should figure stuff out, because you're the person who's really into education, and that's what I do. I'm trying to provide cultural education for people in a big picture, holistic point of view. So yeah, you two couldn't be more different. It seemed like it was about to turn into a debate.
Oh, it was adorable. I love it, though. I love it.
Yeah, no, which I love too. I feel like next time we should have a debate. Anyway, I'm gonna have we're gonna have like a Zeitgeist party at some point.
Oh, cool.
So you could all meet each other. You know, there's about 40 of you. So.
Oh wow, that's so cool. I will definitely try to make that. I love it.
Yeah. All
Look,
right.
what is the weirdest event that you've attended on Zoom?
I haven't attended it.
You haven't?
Oh, no.
I went to a Zoom wedding last weekend.
Oof.
It was amazing. It was
Really?
Yes, and this is what keeps blowing my mind. Is I've now done 3 weird Zoom events, and I have a 4th one tonight. And every time I'm just like, oh my God, this is gonna suck. I can't believe I love this person enough to do it. And then it ends up being energizing and life-giving and beautiful. So the wedding was done in the Quaker style. And so it was a participatory wedding, and it was absolutely lovely. I did a blessing way, so like an indigenous baby shower kind of ceremony. And usually when you have them, you're stuck with the people who live close to you. So this person's friends and family from all over the world was able to be there, and that's also a participatory thing. So it's like these things that you would imagine are, the things that are rooted in togetherness, right? In this cultural grouping, actually have found a space in this digisphere that is very life-giving, right? And affirming in the space in a time when
I need to hang out with you more. You're so positive. And clearly I have that part of the spectrum, but
I love it.
I'm so blessed that Helene introduced us. I don't think she was on.
No, she wasn't. I texted her ahead of time. She did tell me to send you one.
I love her. Well, can we please follow up? I'm gonna
Yes, I would love to.
Next Wednesday is my last day. I'm glad you got to see a little bit of the Zeit guiding. I usually do that for an hour.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was very cool.
All right, take care.
All right,
Bye, everybody.
Bye.